Well, I think I see people coming back and gathering, and Doug Portz is here with us, and he's here to share a number of updates from the Board of Pensions. Doug, good to have you here. How are you doing?
Oh, it's good to be here. I bring you greetings from sunny Pittsburgh. So the sun's out for the second day in a row, thank goodness. But I'm doing well, and I'm glad. I want to thank you for inviting me to be part of your meeting.
Absolutely, good to have you here. So you are ready to share a screen?
I am.
Yes.
I am. So I'm ready to go. If you give me the green light, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I think we are ready.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Well, thank you again for inviting me, and I have a number of things that I'd like to share with you today. It was great to sit in on your meeting and hear about the Vital Churches presentation. That was a very interesting and intriguing, and I hope a lot of churches benefit from that. My name is Doug Portz, and I'm the Senior Church Consultant for the board, and I just want to begin by saying how extraordinary the times are in which we are living, and as I talk to pastors and meet with people all over my region, I know that this is a time of social distancing and doing church in new ways, and everybody's trying to figure that out, learning new skill sets and learning ever new and creative ways to be the church. Zoom Bible studies, Zoom coffee hours, Zoom session meetings, Zoom Lord's Supper meetings, and Matt, your executive presbyter, has been doing a fabulous job of having meetings and getting information out to you. He's one of the EPs of the 24 presbyteries I serve that I think is top notch and has been really doing a lot of great things in the presbytery. So Matt, kudos to you.
You're very sweet, Dave.
What I'd like to do today in the time we have is to give you updates on what the board is doing and how the board has been adjusting to this time in supporting pastors and congregations, and then also give you some updates on some of the benefits plan changes that came out of our March Board of Directors meetings. And I'm going to sort of go through that step by step, but let's first look at what the board has done to adjust to these extraordinary days we're in. First of all, I want you to know that the Board of Pensions is open. All 200 employees in Philadelphia, although Philadelphia is still in the red category and the building shut down, they're all working remotely. So if you call the 800 number, you will get service. For our retirees, pension checks, they don't have to worry about getting their pension checks in spite of the board, the stock market's volatility. They will continue to get their checks. We're well funded and in a very good place. I want to remind you that if ministers and people of our plan have emergencies, they should go to the Presbytery for one-time financial needs to fill out the form and send it in, and then send it to member services. But if these emergency grants are for individuals, not necessarily congregations. Just so all of our members know, 100% is covered in any of our 3 medical plans. For anyone who is diagnosed with COVID-19. Also, we've worked with Teladoc to waive all copays for the online services. I know my doctor's office has had me come in for Teladoc services. They don't want sick people coming into their waiting rooms, and so about 60 to 80% of doctors are now doing this. So we've offered this to our members, and copays are waived through June. In this extraordinary time, more and more in times of isolation, I'm hearing about it, and you perhaps are experiencing it or hearing of people. In times of isolation, depression goes up, suicide goes up. People feel that depression, anxiety, people can't meet with their support groups, their AA groups. They can't go to their doctor. They can't go in for different kinds of checkups. The EAP, the Employee Assistance Program, offers counseling to members Also, we're seeing an increase in identity theft. The Employee Assistance Program offers counseling for those who may have succumbed to a scam. And as for our counseling, we've extended it from 6 free sessions to 10 free sessions. And if you see on that bullet point, it's not only for the pastors in our plan, but even employees who work at their churches who are not in any of our benefits plans, and even for retired members. There's a separate number there that people can call and receive help through the Employee Assistance Program. And as always, check out our website for updates. The thing that I'd like to just remind you of, I know many of you already are aware of this, but the board has offered dues relief for churches. This is on a case-by-case basis, and it's to help those who are least able to recover from the crisis. Now, sadly, I'm hearing from some people that there are some churches that will not open when this is all said and done. This has pushed them over the edge of financial viability. I know presbyteries are struggling to figure out what to do about that. But the board said in these extraordinary times, what can we do to target relief for those congregations, churches that are least able to recover and adjust to the fact 78% of church offerings provide the budget. But when churches are not meeting and people are not giving into offering plates, then their income goes down. And I know many have gone to the foundation and set up online giving. Great. That's probably going to continue when this is all said and done. But here's what the board has done. For congregations of 300 or fewer in members, they can call the board and ask for dues relief. If there's one pastor, ask for the 37% that's paid in for their effective salary to be waived for up to 3 months. It's if you only need one, ask for one. If you need 2 months, ask for 2. But this is for 3. I would get together with your finance people and look at your cash flow over the next number of months. And then what I would do is when you call the board's 800 number, I would say, do you want it for April, May, and June, or do you want it for June, July, and August? And some churches have received PPP, the payroll protection plan. Use that for the first 2 months and then ask for dues relief for the next 3 months. Doesn't matter. Nobody should have a guilty conscience in using both resources to help their ministries move forward. This is for extreme need. We're going on the honor system, so we trust what people tell us when they call into the 800 number. We record it. I'm made aware, Matt is made aware of churches that are given dues relief or dues deferral, which I'll talk about in a minute. And this is done without any reduction in benefits for the pastor. The board is using reserves to pay for this. And so we're offering that to churches at this time. Then there's dues deferral for churches with other ministers and employees with 300 or fewer. Let's say that's a church with 300 or fewer, but there are 2 pastors. The church can ask for dues relief for 3 months for the one pastor, and then dues deferral for the other pastor or other staff members. And certainly ministers and employees of churches of more than 300. If your membership is 302 or 303 and you tell people at the board that you only have 80 coming in worship, most likely you'll get the dues relief. So just be aware of that. PCUSA affiliated organizations are also eligible for this. We are going to review this dues relief policy every 30 days. And I should tell you that we have had over 1,300 churches ask for dues relief, and about 400 to 600, I think, are still being considered for dues deferral. The price tag for this to the board is over $3 million so far. That is coming out of reserves. We can't use pension money or we can't use medical money, so it's coming out of reserves. And we wanted to offer this without putting the whole plan at a financial risk. Here are a few other resources that you might take a look at on the pcusa.org website, as well as on ours. Numerous resources are listed there. The one caution I would give you about some of the resources listed on the PCUSA are there companies that are looking for business. And so they ask you for information, and it's more than just out of the goodness of their heart. They're offering help. They're looking for clients. So just as a little caveat and a little warning there for some of the resources shared. I'm going to stop there and just say, does anyone have any questions about what the board's doing at this point before I go on to my next part about some of the benefit changes? Any questions about dues relief, dues deferral? The one thing I didn't mention is if there are two pastors serving two different churches, you can ask for dues relief for both churches as long as they're under 300. So in shared ministry, partnered ministry, or yoked situations, those churches in those situations too may ask for dues relief. Any questions on what I've shared so far?
We have a question, Doug, from the chat. Where do the surplus funds come from exactly? I think you answered that partly.
Yeah, these are out of reserves that have been given to us and unrestricted endowment kind of funds through assistance. We have several other wonderful Presbyterians from years gone by who have given to the board resources that are unrestricted. And so the board feels it can offer these kinds of helps to congregations without sacrificing anything from anybody's pension or their medical. And we're in a good financial situation due to great decisions made over the past number of years to be able to help churches at this critical time.
And if we had other people who wanted to give to that fund, how would they do that?
I think what you do is you give to the Board of Pensions online, you can give, or through sometimes there's a request for the assistance fund and just mark undesignated on it. Just say it's a gift to the board for undesignated use. And the board has had a history of using such gifts very wisely and at critical times like this to have the biggest impact.
Doug, the board has this employee assistance program, the 6 counseling sessions per issue sort of thing, and that's kind of expanded coverage in this time. Say a little bit about that. Yes.
For members of the plan, there are 6 free counseling sessions. They call that number the Cigna, my Cigna. It's through Cigna Insurance. Depending upon what you say to the person when you call, they sort of do a screening and then they hook you up with a resource depending upon what the issue is in your region for 6 free counseling sessions, and we've expanded that to 10. There's counseling for legal issues, for financial issues, for identity theft. You can call the employee assistance if you have a need for resources for aging parents. They can hook you up with a resource to help you fjord those kind of things. So it is a wonderful resource. I would encourage anyone thinking about using the employee assistance program to go to our website, pensions.org, put in the search engine, employee assistance program, and up will come a list of all the different services that are offered through the employee assistance program. It's a wonderful gem that the board offers.
And so is it just employees, or is there some expansion of that still in place?
Employees who get benefits, employees who work at the church who are not in our plan, as well as retired members at this time.
So that's pretty gracious. I don't know if you all caught that. Employees that work at the church that aren't even members of the Board of Pensions. So that's quite an expansion of that in this COVID-19 time.
Yes, yes. Any other questions?
I was lifting up those questions from the group chat feature, by the way. Are there any, does anyone want to unmute themselves and ask a question? All right, well, let's keep going on, Doug.
Matt, I can't, on my screen, I can't see the comments that are coming in.
Yeah, I shared the questions that had come from the chat feature.
Great. So if I go through the next part, if there are questions that come in and you feel you want to jump in and share that question with me, please feel free to do that.
Yeah, just one final comment was that Cadmus Presbyterian Church up in Michigan had applied for and received the dues relief for the 3 months. And Anne Marie Montgomery, their pastor, is saying that that has made all the difference in the world in their budget. And what a wonderful gift from the board.
Thank you, Matt.
It feels like it has given us breathing room.
Thank you.
For that, Anne Marie.
It was relatively a relatively easy process to apply. There were people who walked us through it, and it didn't take a long time, the process. So all the way around, wonderful gift from the board.
Thank you, Anne Marie. We tried to make it simple, straightforward, and as easy to get as possible. No bureaucratic red tape. We wanted to make it simple. And thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, my treasurer is not a techie person, and he was able to navigate through.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'm going to go on then to some of the benefit changes for 2021. And these are great changes. I want to tell you that I've been a pastor for a number of years. I've been on committee on ministries. I've been an executive presbyter. And when I saw these changes, I said, this is addressing the church where it is, many situations. And so what I want to do today is share with you what's coming and some of the good news that the board has to share. I'm going to share with you why we're changing some things, the rationale, sort of the financial considerations that undergird the decisions we've made. I'm going to share with you who is the target people who are going to be helped by these changes, and how will those people now have access to new and improved resources to support them in their calling to serve Jesus Christ wherever God has called them to be. So I'm going to go through this, and I want you to keep in mind that the board is doing this because we want to keep opening that door a little wider and wider and wider to those we serve, to get more benefits to more people so that they can feel supported in their callings in the church. Well, why the change, and what are we solving for? And what we have done is we have done a study that since 2007, there have been 3,549 ordinations to minister of word and sacrament in our denomination, and over 1,000 of those have been ordained to positions with no benefits. And then we widened out that study, and we found that today there are 2,600 ministers of word and sacrament who do not have any benefits through the Board of Pensions. And now a few of those might have some benefits through a hospice center or a hospital or chaplaincy, but the vast majority of that 2,600 don't have any benefits from the Board of Pensions. And our study also found that there's a 50% greater likelihood for those folks who are ordained and receive no benefits to depart ministry after a while, saying, I just can't live like this. I can't live without the support of my church. I can't live without benefits. And so we're changing things to address the issue of how can we get more benefits to more people to support them. If they go through seminary and they go through the call process, they take their ordination exams and they're examined, and they go through talking with PNCs, and they go through that whole process only to get into a position where they're not given benefits and have to leave ministry. How sad that is. This is what we're solving for. And as we did that study, we found an interesting thing. We weren't looking for this, but this is what the data revealed. And that is, women outnumber men in ordinations. But men tend to receive far greater number of benefits. And so we just raised this up for people to be aware of. And so in your committee on ministry, as they look at contracts and part-time and full-time ministers of word and sacrament, I know in some of the presbyteries I serve, presbyteries have ordained people to 10-hour a week positions with no benefits. And so these presbyteries are looking at those kinds of dynamics, and many of those people being ordained to part-time positions with no benefits happen to be women. And so I raised that up. Well, how we got here, and that is, you're all familiar with the traditional plan from 1987 to 2016, about 30 years or so. It was the traditional plan. You either took it or you take it or leave it kind of attitude, a one size fits all. You either fit in and the church paid for it all, or you left and went somewhere else. Then we heard the voice of the church. We heard that the church wanted flexibility, and so we moved to the menu options from 2017 to this year, where pastors and lay people could go to the menu options and cobble together a number of different benefits depending upon their need and upon their employer. And then in 2021, this is what's coming. In addition to the pastor's participation, which will still be in place, there's going to be a second package for ministers called Minister's Choice. Also, temporary disability and long-term disability plans, both on a standalone basis as well as embedded in the two minister packages. And all of this is to provide better coverage to more people, a low-cost option. In fact, I'm going to talk with you about how the price has been dropped for some of the benefits, so that more ministers can have access to the Board of Pension programs and devote their best work to the work of our Lord. Let's start with something familiar that you're used to, and that is the pastor's participation. And the good news is that the dues for pastor's participation will remain at 37% for the fourth year in a row into 2021. I can't tell you the amount of work that we have done with Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield, with OptumRx, with all of our vendors to keep the price low. We know that churches cannot continue to have these dues going up and up and up. There comes a point where it's just not feasible. So we've been working really hard. But I want to show you what's changed within that 37%. The board is dropping the amount your church pays for your pastor on effective salary from 11% to 8.5% with no change in benefits, meaning that pastor, the number of pension credits they would get with the church paying in 11%, they will get the same number of pension credits with the church paying in 8.5%. How can we do this? It's because the board is so well funded. And if I might add, right now for every dollar that comes in from a church, we pay out 7. So it depends upon the well-fundedness of the balanced portfolio in the pension side of our work. And we're able to do this with no reduction in benefits for current members, as well as for those who will be now in this new structure. I want you to notice that the death and disability remains at 1%. The medical plan dues are going up from 25 to 27%. And then there's this thing called temporary disability that is going to be newly added, a new benefit, even though the overall rate stays at 37. Temporary disability at 0.5%. And so this is the internal percentages, but the overall percentage for pastors' participation stays at 37%. And this is for installed pastors, or for pastors if the church chooses to put them in pastors' participation, even if they're not installed. So that is the option, and then there's the employee assistance program as part of that. Here is what is new, and this is the second package for ministers. It's the minister's choice. And so in the minister's choice, it's everything but the medical, all right, for non-installed positions. So the price this year would be 12%, 11% plus 1, but in 2021, churches who have this package or these benefits will see their percentage cost go down with the temporary disability plan added. So they're getting more for less, all right? And so we have in the minister's choice defined benefit plan, disability, temporary disability, and employee assistance for any minister of word and sacrament working at least 20 hours a week. This is a game changer, particularly for part-time ministers and for non-installed ministers We know that ministers who are not installed, they might have other access to medical care through a spouse or through TRICARE in the military, or maybe they go on a state exchange, or maybe the church gives them a stipend for medical and then they add to it. This provides a huge game changer for part-time, full-time, non-installed positions. It's a financial foundation to protect the pastor in a number of different ways financially, regardless of what happens. In addition, right now, Credo, ministers' educational debt, healthy pastors, sabbatical grant support, you only have access to them, a minister only has access to them if they're in pastor's participation. Again, the board wanting to offer more benefits to more people and open that door. Now, if you're in minister's choice, part-time, non-installed, 20 hours or more, you have access to all these additional programs. And look at the math on this. If you're working 20 hours and earning $25,000, the minister's choice is $2,500 for the church to pay. But imagine this, you're a part-time minister making $25,000, but now you have access to $25,000 in ministerial education debt reduction, a $10,000 grant from Healthy Pastors, Healthy Congregations. You have access to assistance grants, sabbatical grants, transition to college grants for your kids, adoption grants if you adopt a child. All of these things, the door has been open now for those who are in these kinds of positions. I can't tell you the joy I'm hearing from all the presentations that I'm doing and people going, thank you, thank you, thank you. Now I have access to Credo. I can be invited to Credo because of this. Again, this is a game changer. This is good news. Why we're doing this? We want to care for our ministers. We want to support them. We don't want them leaving ministry because they don't feel the church's support. This is a baseline. I encourage all presbyteries to use minister's choice, if they're not installed, as a baseline financial protection for a hip replacement, a difficult pregnancy, a temporary disability is part of minister's choice. This protects pastors. It would be great. The Board of Pension has this idea. It would be great if every church worker had access to the defined pension plan. So when they retire, whether part-time or full-time, they're going to get a pension to protect them in addition to their Social Security. So also we're opening up to the assistance and education programs. The other thing I mentioned to you is we've added temporary disability and long-term disability, but we've rewritten the plan into 3 programs and then a number of plans. I'm not going to spend much time on that, but if you pick up our documents, you'll see they've been rewritten and updated. But I want to talk about temporary disability first. We all know that there's been this gap for pastors in pastors' participation, that if they have a hip replacement or they become disabled due to mental or physical disability, it's really a financial hardship on that church to maintain benefits and pay that salary until the 90th day. By the board adding temporary disability to pastors' participation and even to minister's choice, let's say a pastor needs to have that hip replacement or is headed toward long-term disability or has a pregnancy where the doctor says you should be off your feet for 6 weeks due to toxemia and can't work. The temporary disability fills in that gap. Let's say the pastor takes some vacation for the first 14 days, and then from day 15 all the way to 90, because long-term disability kicks in on day 91. The temporary disability plan covers that up to 60% of the pastor's effective salary, right? Huge, because if the plan through Lincoln Financial is paying it, that means the church is not paying it, and they have additional resources to find pastoral leadership to fill in the pulpit while their pastor is on temporary disability. So it's temporary disability is included in pastor's participation and minister's choice, totally paid by the church. But the board also is offering this. Temporary disability on a standalone basis, priced slightly differently for commissioned pastors, for CREs, or for other employees who work at the church. And you'll see anyone working 20 hours or more, that church can, for the organist, the custodian, the youth director, buy temporary disability. I can tell you, and this is something that Matt might want to plan for, because of the COVID, a number of hip replacements and knee replacements have been postponed. But now that pastors are learning the temporary disability is coming, they're planning all their surgeries and procedures for after January 1st. So there's going to be a number of presbyteries that are going to have a number of pastors go on temporary disability in the first half of next year. So some presbyteries are already lining up some pulpit supplies for those who are going to take advantage of the temporary disability. But this is on a standalone basis. And if you go through us, there's no pre-existing condition limitation, nor does a person have to send us their medical records and provide evidence of insurability. The rate stays the same regardless if someone has a pre-existing condition. Who does this help? It keeps the member whole. It helps the church free up 60% of that person's effective salary to put toward a temporary supply. It helps the Committee on Ministry and the Presbytery be able to step in and be pastoral with that church, to look at the resources that have been freed up to see how can we get you through this time that your pastor is on temporary disability. So it's a win, and a win for everybody. And the board heard this, and the board is offering it. And again, there's great rejoicing across the church that the board has done this. So what I tell churches and presbyteries, they should work out, well, if the board is paying 60% of the effective salary, should the church continue paying the other 40% of the person's salary? I would encourage churches to do that. They'll still have the 60% for other leadership, to hire maybe a temporary supply. And then I encourage presbyteries to look at their leave policies. If they have a leave policy for certain conditions, how might this temporary disability policy fit in with the local presbytery leave policy? Long-term disability, again, we know that this starts on the 91st day. It's part of pastor's participation. It pays 60% of that. But now CPs and CREs and other employees can buy this on a standalone basis to cover themselves. Here's an example. It is very reasonable in cost. For a $40,000 a year effective salary, it's only $140 a year. So imagine how this could protect other employees. In opening up the door further to increase the number of benefits we provide church workers, emergency assistance grants are now offered to all pensioners. If you're in our pension system, you get not just medical and pension like in the past, but if you're in Minister's Choice and you're a pensioner, you have adoption assistance grants, you have transition to college grants, and retiree medical grants. It used to be you had to be in Medicare A and B and be in our supplement. The board has opened that up so that if you're in Medicare A and B and you've had a number of years with the Board of Pensions, even if you buy a Medicare Advantage or a Medicare Supplement plan, not ours, you now are eligible for retiree medical grants, up to $5,000 a year, every 3 years. So it's huge. I'm going to move on to this. This is just where you can find more information on our website. I encourage you to go there and play around, look around, surf around. Member Services is there, and there is my information that if you have any questions about what I have shared here today, and you want to call me, or if a committee wants more information, I can send information. But this is good news from the board. It's going to help part-time and full-time ministers. It's going to open up the door to more benefits, getting to more people, so that in their calling to Jesus Christ, serving in their congregations, they can feel the support of the whole church behind them. And I encourage presbyteries to use these resources well as they think about what they're going to encourage or mandate for terms of call in 2021. So I'm going to stop there and see if anybody has any questions on these new benefit changes for 2001, temporary disability, Minister's Choice. Any questions?
Yeah, Ann Wasson says, I do agree too, and is dental out of the question?
Dental is on the menu options that the employer, the church, can pay for, or the employee can opt to pay for. So it is offered on the menu, but it's not included in either of these packages. So pastors and or church employees at a church, if they talk to their employer, the church could pay for it, or the employee could ask to buy it themselves.
And yes, we will. Someone's asking if we can get a copy of the presentation, and yes, this recording will be available. Doug, can we circle back around to the temporary disability, because I seem to remember, maybe I missed a slide or something and I zoned out, but I seem to remember a pretty broad definition of what temporary disability can be according to the board. It wasn't just a knee surgery. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes, it will be for any medical, any doctor who writes for a physical or a mental condition that prevents someone from working. So it's a very liberal definition. Depression. If a doctor says you're so depressed you can't work, if you need rehab, drug addiction.
What about maternity and paternity? I mean, are we?
It's for a medical condition.
A medical condition.
If a female pastor has a medical condition wherein prior to the birth or after the birth, the doctor writes a medical reason why the person cannot be at work, the temporary disability policy would cover it. And more details about that will come out by July. They're still working on some of the wording. So that by employer agreement season, which opens up for churches the middle of July and goes through October. And pastors and everyone need to know this. So when they go into the Benefits Connect and into either the enrollment or look at their benefits, they're now going to see a minister's choice option if they're not installed. And they're also going to see temporary disability as a new benefit. And we want them to not go, where did that come from? Or am I paying for something I didn't ask for? We want them to know temporary disability is embedded in both these packages when they see that benefit listed.
Are there other questions? Go ahead and unmute yourself and go ahead and ask.
Doug, this is not a question, it's more of a comment.
Yes.
The temporary disability, I'm retired now. I never would have needed it in my 40+ years, but in all the presbyteries I served, there were people who would have benefited greatly from that. So I think it's a very, very good addition.
Thank you.
Another question? Well, Doug, I thank you for being with us today. This sounds like a wonderful pivot that the Board of Pensions is doing. I have Lutheran pastor friends and UCC pastor friends that are jealous of the benefits that I have, and it sounds like it's only going to get more broad in terms of options and things that the board is doing for us. And Credo is wonderful. I'll just put my plug in for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, and as we live through these extraordinary days, I just want to end by saying thank you again for inviting me. Matt, thank you for all the work you've done to make all this possible. And I want you to know that every Friday we at the board have someone lead our devotion. And I'd led it a few weeks ago. And in that devotion, it's not only a time for all 200 of us to connect with each other, but it's a time that we pray for you and the presbyteries and the churches, pastors, congregations, and all those called by God to serve. So we want you to know we not only support you in prayer, but also with all of the things I've been talking about. And thank you for this time.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. I think Dean is going to take it from here and take us in the final stretch. Thanks again, Doug.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to leave. And Dean, you take care. And Great article in the Presbyterians today. I saw you quoted in there, so great job.
Thank you. Am I on, Matt?
Come on.